Welcome, dear listener, to this quiet passage through time. Tonight, I invite you to rest, to breathe a little slower, and to gently settle into the distant rhythms of the medieval world. You don't need to do anything now, just lie back, let your eyes grow heavy, and allow your mind to wander gently through centuries past. But the quieter, grittier truths that made up the day-to-day experience of those who lived in a different, far harsher world than our own. This journey will take you through 3 stories. Each is distinct, yet they all weave together a tapestry of life in the Middle Ages, not the heroic tales of knights and dragons we begin with. Why you wouldn't last a day in a medieval city. Smell the smoke of countless hearts. Hear the chatter of vendors and the clatter of horses on stone. But you'll also feel the discomfort, the filth, the noise, the relentless closeness. Cities empty, traditions collapse, and fear becomes a constant companion. Yet within that silence and sorrow, we also find unexpected change, social shifts, spiritual awakenings, and the quiet resilience of those who remained. It's a vivid glimpse into the urban chaos of medieval life that few today could endure. You'll walk through the narrow, overcrowded streets, and if you drift off somewhere along the way, know that the past will continue softly without you until you return again, only more vulnerable to the rhythms of earth, power, and belief. From there, we shift into the shadow of crisis and how the Black Death changed the medieval world. As a plague spreads across continents, the world unravels. Finally, we end with a sober reflection on order and punishment and the brutal truth about medieval justice. It is a world of public trials, ordeals by fire and water, and a system both distant and eerily familiar. In a time when retinol was rare and justice could be both deeply symbolic and cruel, we explore how crime was handled, how guilt was determined, and how fear kept entire villages in check. 3 stories: urban life, deadly plague, and grim justice. Each a window into the lives of people not so different from us. Let these stories unfold slowly. Let the candlelight flicker in your mind's eye. Now breathe deeply. The first story begins. Close your eyes and let your breath soften as we drift into the distant echoes of time. Tonight, we step into the past, not through grand battles or heroic epics, but through the subtle rhythms of ordinary life in extraordinary times. Welcome to this episode of SleepyTime History, titled Why You Wouldn't Last a Day in a Medieval City and More. In this journey, we begin with the gritty and often uncomfortable reality of medieval city life, where narrow alleys overflowed with noise, odors, and unpredictability. From there, we'll quietly follow the story of a fallen monarch, King Richard, to wander into the shadowy legend of the Templar treasure that was never found. A journey through time designed to soothe, not to startle, to lull you gently toward rest, and finally observe a day in the quiet, gilded life of a noble woman in 14th century France. This is not the history of textbooks. It is the quiet, immersive kind, filled with damp cobblestones, candlelit corridors, faded tapestries, and long-forgotten rituals. So, settle in, breathe deeply, and let the past unfold slowly, with each word and whisper guiding you closer to sleep. Segment 1. Why you wouldn't last a day in a medieval city. Imagine yourself waking up in a room no larger than a small stable. The walls are of rough timber, with cracks that allow the wind to whistle in. Above, the roof of thatch leaks slightly from last night's rain. There is no glass in the window, just a thin animal skin stretched tight to block the breeze. The floor beneath you is packed dirt, swept clean by use more than effort. Your bed, if you are lucky, is a wooden frame stuffed with straw. You rise before the sun. The city is already stirring. Footsteps echo on the stone outside. Someone pulls a cart, a baby cries. You may stop briefly in the shade of a stone wall to rest, but time is precious. Most cannot afford to be idle. Hunger gnaws at you. The bread you saved is already hard. If you're lucky, you'll trade for a turnip, or share a stew made thin with water and weeds. There is respect ingrained in this life, carved into every custom, every glance, and yet, moments of joy bloom like wildflowers in the cracks. A song hummed while mending a net, a story traded for bread, a quiet moment by a fountain, worn smooth by generations of hands. You curl under your blanket and listen. The city does not sleep, not really. It hums beneath the silence. The air is colder now. You wrap yourself in a wool blanket, worn thin from years of use. Your hands are rough from labor. Your body is tired, but rest comes slowly. The weight of the day still lingers. Let us leave the narrow streets behind and turn our gaze toward a throne, toward the rise and fall of a troubled king. You hear the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat of the neighborhood. The city is not a place of beauty, but of function, dense, grimy and alive in its own relentless way. The clatter fades, the smells soften. But in waking life, this is what it means to live in a medieval city. Cramped, noisy, rough, but steady in its rhythm, constant in its demands. A world held together by habit, survival, and the slow, careful passage of time. It is not a life of ease, but one of motion, of endurance, and of community bound tightly by necessity. You know of people who disappeared quickly one day, coughing the next day gone. Some say prayers, others whisper about bad omens. There is no running water. You make your way half-dressed to the community well, joining others with wooden boots. Merchants pack up their stalls, their voices hoarse from the day's bargaining. The smell of roasting onions drifts from a cookpot, promising a warm, if simple, meal. Perhaps you gather with neighbors around a fire, sharing warmth and stories. Perhaps you sit alone, patching your clothes by candlelight. The cathedral casts its long shadow over your life, towering in silence, offering moments of stillness amid the chaos. Inside, the cool stone floors and the scent of incense offer brief escape, though sermons speak of sin and suffering more than solace. The city is a crowded tangle of bodies and voices and the constant clatter of wood, iron, and leather. Most days are spent working, perhaps weaving, tanning leather, or hammering nails. If you are an apprentice, your tasks are repetitive and endless. The noise softens, but never disappears. There are no streetlights, just the rare lantern or moonlit stone. You navigate by memory, lock your doors, if you have them, sleep lightly. There are thieves, always, and fire spreads quickly in homes built so close together. If you are a laborer, your hands are your currency. Your time is traded for survival. The smell is already thick in the air, a mix of animal sweat, firewood smoke, and the more pungent odors of a city that disposes of waste into its own streets. Chamber pots are emptied with little ceremony from second-story windows. You begin before dawn, your hands raw from cold water and lye. You scrub and rinse and hang clothes that are rarely truly clean. Or a cobbler, bent over cracked leather, working in the dim light of a single candle. These are the rhythms of the city, the slow wear of labor repeated day after day. You learn quickly not to walk too close to the buildings. The streets are narrow and alive with movement. Vendors call out in hoarse voices. Dogs sniff at refuse. There is little space and less silence. Your breakfast, if you have some coin, might be a piece of hard bread and a bit of ale, weak, sour, and safer than the water. Perhaps you are a washerwoman. By midday, the sun struggles through a hazy sky, illuminating the grime that clings to every surface. The air feels close, thick, and dry. Disease is common. Coughs echo in every corner. Cuts become infected easily. Rats scurry openly through the alleys. The scent of decay is ever present. The church bells mark your time. You pause when they ring, as much out of habit as devotion. For most, religion is both comfort and obligation. Children play in the margins barefoot and curious. They chase dogs or roll hoops through the muddy lanes, but they are quiet when elders pass. As the sun lowers in the sky, the marketplace begins to fade. Evening brings a slow dimming of the world. Candles flicker behind wooden shutters. The streets become eerie. A dog barks unanswered. Somewhere, a man yells drunkenly into the night. As the night settles, you lie once more on your straw-filled mattress. Perhaps in your dreams, the city grows quiet. Now, as the bells toll once again and the city drifts to an easy rest, we move onward. Segment 2. The Fall and Rise of Richard II. Let us slip away from the grit and noise of the streets and into the dim corridors of power. The story of Richard II is not one of epic battles or sweeping victories, but rather a quiet descent, a slow unraveling of a young king crowned too early, burdened too heavily, and remembered not for triumph, but for the loneliness of losing everything. Let us walk carefully into his world, a world of velvet shadows, golden seals, and whispered betrayal. Richard II was born in 1367 into a world already clouded with tension. He was the grandson of the mighty Edward III, a king whose legacy was cast long and deep over the realm. Promised reforms, and for a moment, peace. But days later, the rebel leaders were executed, and the promises unraveled like thread in the wind. Parliament, with its growing confidence, clashed with the king. He dissolved councils, dismissed criticism, and relied more heavily on a circle of loyal followers. His decisions became more absolute, his punishments more permanent. He became increasingly isolated at court, choosing to be surrounded only by those who confirmed his authority, who offered loyalty over counsel. Trust was something Richard learned to withhold. He wore robes dyed in deep purples and rich reds, colors of power and wealth. In court, his speeches became more solemn. His declarations, once soft, grew bold and final. The nobles smiled too often, spoke too carefully. Few dared contradict him. Art, poetry, and symbolism flourished in the royal household, but so too did anxiety. There was a chill behind the pageantry, a sense that even the thickest tapestries could not soften. But answers were slow and cold. And then, one day, nothing came at all. They claimed he was misled, that his favorites corrupted the realm. He wore no crown, he gave no speeches. Later, he was quietly transferred to Pontefract Castle. Cold stone walls became his last kingdom. He vanished from sight. His cousin, Henry Bolingbroke, returned from exile not with rebellion in his words, but with inheritance on his mind. Henry marched. Towns opened their gates. Nobles pledged allegiance. Even Richard's closest allies faltered. His father, John of Gaunt, had died. His lands should have passed to Henry, but Richard had claimed them instead. But in those silences, we hear the echo of a man caught between worlds, between the divine and the human, between grandeur and grief. In the years that followed, his ghost lingered in plays and poems. Let us now descend further into the past, into the legend of hidden riches, forgotten oaths, and silence cloaked in secrecy. Chroniclers debated his downfall. Shakespeare, writing more than a century later, would craft him as a tragic figure, lonely, poetic, fragile. There was no fight, no ceremony of resistance. He traveled quietly through the countryside, visiting towns and monasteries. Others whispered of murder, but the truth, wrapped in secrecy, was never revealed. His burial was quiet, his grave unadorned for many years. The crown passed to Henry IV. England turned a page. He observed, he waited, he kept a quiet record of names. And then, by 1397, he struck. With the quiet certainty of a man who had waited long enough, he arrested the Lords of Pell. Some were executed, others were exiled. A figure out of step with his time. A king who believed too much in symbols, and not enough in the people behind them. They led a coup in all but name. Richard was forced to submit. His friends were executed. His pride was bruised, though he remained outwardly calm. Inside, something shifted. Those who had once whispered concerns now did so with glances alone. Richard's father, the revered Edward the Black Prince, died before he could inherit the throne, leaving young Richard to ascend as king at just 10 years old. Imagine, if you will, the heavy coronation crown placed upon the head of a boy still learning to hold a sword properly. He wore fine robes, held elaborate ceremonies, and surrounded himself with the pageantry of power. The great landowners and peers of the realm, their pride bruised and their voices silenced, waited. But beneath the slates and candles was a mind burdened with the fear of instability. His reign came shortly after the Black Death had ravaged England, and the Peasants' Revolt of 1381, when mobs surged into London, demanding justice, left its imprint on his soul. Parliament under his eye, passed laws strengthening his power. Treason was redefined. His will was law. He declared his reign eternal and divine. He even spoke of choosing his own successor, an unheard of notion in a world of hereditary crowns. The court around him was full of ambitious nobles and seasoned counselors. While Richard played among tapestries and marble halls, others made decisions in his name. He was surrounded, not comforted, advised, but never trusted. The weight of leadership pressed gently at first, but the pressure never ceased. The early years of his reign were dominated by regents and advisors, but Richard watched closely. When he came of age, he began to assert his authority, often in quiet and subtle ways. He removed counselors one by one, replacing them with favorites of his choosing. These men, polished and intellectual, echoed Richard's ideals: order, dignity, divine kingship. But in the eyes of the nobility, they were out of place. They whispered that the king was weak. Richard's belief in royal dignity went beyond symbolism. He had met with the rebels personally, a teenager facing thousands. He spoke to them calmly. As he matured, Richard's rule turned increasingly order. He commissioned grand buildings and filled them with artworks that reflected his divine vision of monarchy. But even kings cannot govern alone. And while Richard basked in his vision of kingship, a different current stirred below the surface. In 1387, a group of powerful nobles known as the Lords of Pell rose against him. For years afterward, Richard bided his time. He enacted what some would call revenge, others justice. The court, once bustling with intrigue, grew quiet. Then, in 1399, fate shifted. What began as a dispute over land turned into a sweeping campaign. Richard traveled north, trying to raise support. He sent messages. He called for loyalty. He returned south, exhausted and cornered. He met Henry in Wales and, with grace or resignation, surrendered. He was brought to the Tower of London no longer as a king, but as a prisoner. The silence surrounding his end was profound. Some claimed he starved, yet Richard did not vanish from memory. We remember him now not as conqueror or tyrant, but as a shadow. His rise was quiet, his fall quiet as still. As we close the chapter on Richard's troubled reign, we turn to older mysteries still unsolved. Segment 3. The treasure that was never found. Now, let us pass through another kind of silence, one steeped in shadows, myth, and whispered oaths. As you settle more deeply into rest, we travel not to a single castle or court, but across time and continents, tracing the echoes of a vanished order and the mystery they left behind. The Knights Templar and the treasure that has never been found. The Knights Templar were once the most powerful military and religious order in Christendom, founded in the early 12th century, in the wake of the First Crusade. Their mission was simple: to protect pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land, and yet their organization amassed immense riches, gold, land, and relics of incalculable value. Some were grand stone citadels perched on cliffs, while others were modest commanderies nestled in farmlands. Wherever they built, rumors followed. By the early 14th century, their fortunes had shifted. The Holy Land had been lost, their military purpose questioned. And in France, King Philip IV, deeply in debt, to the order saw an opportunity. On Friday, the 13th of October 1307, the Templars were arrested. In Portugal, the Templars were allowed to reform under a new name, the Order of Christ. Some believe the treasure was smuggled there, hidden in castles like Toma. Some believe they found something there, an ancient relic, a secret knowledge, something so powerful that it had to be hidden forever. Others think it was not gold they protected, but a secret that could shake the church to its foundation. In Scotland, myths persist that fleeing knights found sanctuary and buried their riches beneath Rosslyn Chapel, a place laden with mysterious carvings and hidden chambers. Each theory spins a different tale, but none are provable. What is real is the void, the absence, the unexplained disappearance, the silence. Hundreds of knights were seized, their properties confiscated, their leaders imprisoned. In modern conspiracy, there are the shadows behind world events. In video games, there are eternal adversaries. Their sigilla, red cross on white, remains a powerful icon. Perhaps it is not gold, but a silence kept perfectly intact for 700 years. And now, from the hidden vaults of the mysterious to the embroidered walls of nobility, we move gently upward to another kind of daily life, to luxury, rules, and elegant boredom, to the world of a noblewoman in 14th century France. A mystery not to be solved, but to be carried like a flame in the dark. Perhaps the order's true wealth lay not in gold, but in influence. Yet the legends persist, carried from generation to generation. Books written, films made, codes hidden in cathedrals. Moss has crept along the stone. Ivy clings to archways. The air is cool and hushed. A cracked altar sits beneath an arched ceiling. Beneath your feet, a hollow soundstone covering something beneath. You kneel, brush away the dirt, a lock rusted shut. No one is watching. You place your hand on it. The Templars became less a historical entity and more a symbol of secrecy, devotion, and the unknown. Instead, you rise. You leave it undisturbed, as it has been for centuries. The mystery preserved. The silence intact. Some spoke of secret tunnels, hidden vaults, and rituals held deep beneath chapel floors. Still, the damage was done. The Pope, pressured by Philip, disbanded the order. Across Europe, remnants of their world remain. In England, the circular church of the Temple in London still stands. In France, the Tower of Chinon whispers its own story. In Spain, their castles cast long shadows at sunset. In each one can feel the stillness, the waiting. In the absence of clarity, mystery took root, and at the heart of it was one persistent question. What happened to the Templar treasure? The Grand Master, Jacques de Mal, was burned at the stake in 1314. Before his death, he reportedly cursed the Pope and King. Within a year, both were dead. Kings borrowed money from them. Merchants stored wealth in their strongholds. Secrets about the early church, the bloodline of Christ, or ancient wisdom carried from Jerusalem. To those who believe this, the disappearance wasn't a theft, it was protection. They developed an early form of banking, issuing letters of credit to travelers. Inventories showed gaps. Vaults were empty. Horses had fled before the arrests. Some say treasure-laden carts left Paris under cover of night. Others claim ships slipped out of French ports, never to return. In time, they became more than knights. They became guardians of treasure, both physical and spiritual. But what began as a handful of devout warriors soon became a vast and wealthy organization with its own rules, lands, and influence across Europe. They dressed in simple white robes marked by a red cross. They took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. The Templars were sworn to secrecy. Their oaths were solemn, and to the outside world, silence often looks like conspiracy. The Templars built fortresses across Europe and the Middle East. Their rituals, shrouded in secrecy, invited speculation. Initiation ceremonies conducted at night, behind closed doors, were whispered about with fascination and suspicion. The organization became vast, commanding thousands of knights, squires, chaplains, and servants. They answered only to the Pope, independent of kings and princes. Their strongholds became financial hubs, their influence global in scope. In many ways, they were the first international corporation, wealthy, mobile, unaccountable, but their rise would not last. Accusations ranged from heresy to devil worship, claims both sensational and convenient. Under torture, confessions were extracted. Many retracted them, and so the Templars vanished from the pages of official history. But their story did not end it transformed. Contemporary records speak of vast riches, gold coins, silver goblets, sacred relics. When their commanderies were seized, much was missing. From these fragments, legends grew. Some say the treasure wasn't treasure at all but knowledge, esoteric teachings, forgotten scrolls. In Jerusalem, treasure hunters still search beneath the Temple Mount, where the first Templars were quartered. The Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, the true bones of Christ. Historians debate whether there was ever a treasure at all. Perhaps the riches were exaggerated. In literature, they often serve as guardians of forbidden truths. And what of the places they left behind? Imagine now, as you rest, that you are walking through such a ruin. but you do not open it. Perhaps that treasure, whatever it was never meant to be found. Let your thoughts drift with that silence. Let your breathing slow. Segment 4. A day in the life of a noblewoman in 14th century France. Let us now slip into a different world altogether, a world draped in velvet and silk, bound by ritual and silence. As your body grows heavier and the soft edges of sleep begin to blur your picture yourself in the shadowed corridors of a stone chateau in 14th century France. Here, we will spend a quiet day in the company of a noblewoman, a lady not of battle or rebellion, but of quiet influence, of routine and refinement, bound by the soft chains of tradition. Over these a curtalor codadi fitted and laced, a surcoat or gown might follow, its sleeves long and trailing, its fabric dyed with costly indigo or madder root. Conversation is hushed commentary on embroidery, the health of livestock, a neighbor's marriage arrangement. A lute may rest beside a cushioned bench. The noblewoman plucks the strings, not expertly, but with practiced care. She hums softly, barely above a whisper, letting her fingers move with familiarity. Conversation, when it happens, is deliberate. Politics may be discussed in veiled language, the affairs of the local parish, the tenants' latest petitions, the shifting alliances among neighboring lords. The noblewoman listens, occasionally offering insight, shaped more by instinct and etiquette than by formal power. If they are daughters, she watches how they sew or recite prayers. They sit in the parlor sipping spiced wine, exchanging veiled judgments and coded praise. Their voices are low, melodic, their laughter restrained. Then a light, meal cheese bread, perhaps a fruit preserved in syrup. The fire is lit again. Shadows lengthen on the walls. The noblewoman retires early. Her gown is unfastened by her maid. Her hair is brushed again, plaited for sleep. If they are sons, she listens to their Latin. Their futures are already shaped in her mind. Walled, quiet, blooming with lilies and thyme. Birds sing softly from hedgerows. Her pace is slow, her thoughts are private. Sometimes a harp is brought. The room fills with a gentle cascade of notes, fragile, floating, ephemeral. Sometimes she pauses to read. Her books are rare and handwritten, kept behind carved oak doors. They are mostly religious psalters, devotional texts, perhaps a life of a saint. If she reads Latin, she reads alone. If not, one of her ladies reads aloud. Her prayers are whispered, private, sometimes in tears. The stone chamber grows colder. She climbs beneath the covers. In her own way, she holds power not in swords or gold, but in the shaping of lives, in the keeping of ritual, in the quiet dignity of being seen and unseen. You have walked through city streets, courtly halls, ancient vaults, and gardens in bloom. Now it is time to rest, time to carry the quiet of history into your dreams. Her belt is ornamented, often a gift from a relative, or perhaps a messenger will arrive at dawn with news from court. But tonight, her world is closed, quiet, contained, wrapped in fabric, in stone, in centuries of tradition. Inside her room, the noblewoman exhales, closes her eyes, and drifts. The steward might report the yield of the orchards, the condition of the dovecotes, the brewing of ale. The noblewoman, while not officially the estate's head, is the quiet administrator of many things. She knows who is sick in the village, whose crops failed, whose daughter has just reached marrying age. Her counsel is sought by her husband, her servants, even the priest. At her throat, a brooch, perhaps a family heirloom. Rings are slipped onto fingers with careful attention. Pottage bread, roasted fowls, stewed vegetables, all flavored with herbs from the garden. Spices like saffron and cinnamon, rare and precious, might flavor the meal. She eats slowly, speaking little. A veil or wimple might complete the look, both a marker of modesty and marital status. The day begins not with an alarm, but with the gentle light of the sun creeping across the stone window. Sometimes she embroiders delicate stitches worked into linen stretched across a frame. Her fingers are calloused but precise. She might write letters, dictating to a clerk. Her words are measured, careful, polite. Perhaps she visits the still room, overseeing the preparation of salves or preserves. Lavender oil, rose water, honeyed figs. The air is heavy with the scent of beeswax, candles, and damp stone. The noblewoman follows the prayers, hands clasped. The rhythm of prayer anchors the day. A noblewoman's chamber is cool in the morning, scented faintly of lavender and the fading warmth of the night's fire. The noblewoman rises slowly, the floor chilled beneath her feet. Her morning toilette begins, hands and face washed, hair unbraided from the night before. Her hair is brushed slowly, 100 strokes perhaps, as was customary, each stroke a silent meditation. The walls are lined with tapestries depicting saints or hunting scenes, stitched by nimble hands, hers perhaps, or those of ladies in waiting. Her bed is large, canopied with thick curtains to hold in warmth. Linen sheets embroidered with her family crest feel crisp against the skin. Her waking is not solitary. A maid enters, quiet-footed, carrying warm water in a pewter basin. Dressing is not done in haste. It is a process. First, a linen then layers of undergarment stays, sometimes padded. The day formally begins with Mass. In the private chapel within the estate, a priest chants the familiar Latin verses. Afterward, she walks the gallery with her ladies. There are lessons in music as well. Midday brings the main meal, served in the solar rather than the great hall, more private, more refined. The food is not simple, yet neither extravagant. The table is quiet, save for the soft scrape of spoons against bowls. Afternoons vary. There are matters of estate to attend to. Her children, if she has any, are brought to her. She instructs their governess, asks after their lessons. Later, she might receive visitors, a neighboring lady perhaps, or a distant cousin. As the sun lowers, she might walk in the garden. Evening brings vespers, more prayer. She kneels before her bedside crucifix. Outside, the castle is quiet. Guards pace softly. Torches flicker. The world breathes in silence. Her day was neither heroic nor idle. It was bound by time, expectation, duty. Perhaps tomorrow will be the same. As we leave her there, breathing steadily beneath her quilted canopy, let us also ease ourselves into stillness. Sleep gently now, beneath your own canopy of calm. Conclusion. And now, dear listener, as we draw the heavy velvet curtain across this journey through the layered folds of history, let the rhythm of the past settle gently in your thoughts. You've walked cobbled medieval streets, stood at the side of kings and queens, peered into the shadowy vaults of lost treasures, and glided through the walled gardens of or you may be lying awake, your breath soft and even your mind gently dimming like the final candle in a stone corridor. Each story, though long past, still whispers to us in soft echoes, grounding us in the shared rhythm of human life, its hardship, its beauty, its quiet persistence. You may be asleep already, floating between the timbers of a medieval tavern or beneath the embroidered canopy of a castle bed. Wherever you are in this moment, let it be enough. Let your breath slow. Let the silence settle around you like a warm, woven cloak. History is not only grand battles and loud declarations. Sometimes it is the creak of a floorboard, the scent of wood smoke, the hush of a chapel at dusk. Sometimes it is simply the steady turning of days long gone, but never lost. Thank you for spending this time with us at SleepyTime History. May your sleep be deep, may your dreams be gentle, and may the past watch over you with peace. Welcome, dear listener, to this quiet passage through time. Today, our story will be a gentle journey into the heart of a world long past. A world where life was raw, challenging, and unlike anything you have known. Tonight, we explore a truth that might surprise you: why you wouldn't last a day in a medieval city. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke, damp earth, and the unmistakable presence of life lived close to nature's edge. This city, alive with people from all walks, is both vibrant and unforgiving. It is a world far removed from the comforts and conveniences we take for granted today. A world where stone walls enclosed bustling streets filled with noise, smells, and sights that challenge the modern mind. Imagine yourself wandering slowly through narrow, twisting lanes where every corner holds a story of struggle and survival. But it is also a story of resilience, community, and the human spirit's ability to endure. In the next hour, we will gently explore the daily realities that made life in a medieval city so difficult. The crowded homes, the filth-filled streets, the constant threats of disease and danger. We will walk quietly through the marketplaces, listen to the voices of merchants and children, and feel the pulse of a time when every moment was a careful balance between survival and hope. This is the story of why you wouldn't last a day in a medieval city. So, as you settle deeper into relaxation, allow yourself to drift softly into this ancient world, where life was raw, close, and demanding, yet full of quiet moments of grace. Let us begin. Segment 1. Why you wouldn't last a day in a medieval city. Welcome, dear listener, to this quiet passage through time. Today, our story will be why you wouldn't last a day in a medieval city. Tonight, we venture together into the heart of a medieval city, not to shock or alarm, but to gently unfold the daily life of those who once walked cobblestone streets under gray, smoke-filled skies. The air is thick with the mingled scent of damp wood, smoke, and livestock, or the wife of a coop, a child who has seen too many winters. The rhythm of your life is dictated by bells, market days, and the shifting of seasons. Somewhere nearby, a rooster crows, a distant church bell tolls. Another day begins. Allow yourself to settle in. Breathe deeply. Imagine the softness of candlelight, the weight of woolen blankets, and the stillness of a world long past. Close your eyes, if you wish, and imagine a fire must be tended, bread must be made. Floors are packed dirt, windows are small and mostly covered. Light, when it enters, is diffuse and gray. Warmth, in winter, is earned through smoke and layers, not comfort. Your hands are rough, your feet ache, you are always tired. The hearth is the center of the home, not only for cooking but for warmth, for storytelling, for prayer, a sudden patch of sunlight on a stained glass window, the way rain sparkles on slate roofs, the smell of rosemary in a pot of stew, a mother humming as she brushes her daughter's hair, a moment of laughter at the well. Ale must be brewed, clothing must be mended. Families often share a single room, and privacy is a luxury no one expects. You may not like all of them, but in times of need, you turn to each other. You learn when to speak and when to disappear into the background. A borrowed loaf, a shared fire, a whispered prayer, only stocks, or a scaffold. People gather, not to protest, but to watch. Childer too. A thief may lose a hand. A woman accused of witchcraft may vanish before sunrise. The line between survival and punishment is narrow. You hear your neighbors argue. You smell their food. You know the rhythm of their coughs. But because modern life has softened you to certain discomforts, to 1,000 small hardships that were once considered ordinary, wrap your shawl tighter and begin once more. There is no guarantee of safety, no assurance that tomorrow will look like today. Every day is a balance of hope and labor, of reverence and fear, the way they found small joys amidst dirt and struggle. The sun has barely risen, a pale mist clings to the low rooftops. You are not a noble. You are not a scholar. You are one of the many a tradesman, perhaps, to make meaning in a world that gives little back. They sing as they work. They pray as they suffer. They dance on feast days. They pass stories to their children. The next, their door is marked, their windows shuttered. They are gone. The ground beneath your feet is a mixture of mud, manure, and refuse whatever has been tossed from windows during the night. The streets are narrow, so narrow that buildings on either side almost seem to touch. Stone and timber lean together like tired old men. Rainwater drips from overhanging eaves, step by step, carrying their memory with reverence. Fires spread quickly, disease even faster. Punishments are public, and justice is swift. A kind of order in the disorder. The baker rises before dawn. The bell at the monastery tolls each hour. We now turn to the black death and the storm that followed the silence. The market square fills with voices, then empties by sundown. Children play with scraps. A dog curls in the doorway. A song drifts from a window, because there are no sewers, no plumbing. Chamber pots are emptied into the street with a shout of warning. Dogs bark. A child slips and falls. A merchant curses. Life in the city does not pause. It moves endlessly, with a kind of grim determination. Gardyloo, someone might cry in old Edinburgh. In other cities, silence is your only clue before something unpleasant splashes at your feet. The filth gathers in the gutters. Rats dart from shadows, scavenging what they can. The calls of market vendors. The creak of cartwheels over uneven stone. The rhythmic clop of hooves. A distant lute played for coin. You try to listen for birdsong, but it is lost in the constant clamor of human life, pressed too tightly together. Noises everywhere. The clang of a blacksmith's hammer. Inside the homes, things are no quieter. Walls are made of wattle and daub patched with straw, and when illness comes, it spreads like a whispered secret. One moment your neighbor complains of chills. You cannot bathe, often soap is expensive. Water is fetched in heavy buckets, and yet, amid this hardship, there is routine, familiarity, and though the city is harsh, it is not without beauty. There is also community. You know your neighbors well, but always there is the closeness, the crowding, the sense that everything's safety, peace, dignity can be taken in an instant. If you are accused of a crime, there may be no trial. And so you keep your head down, you learn whom to trust. The night brings no silence. Drunks stagger through the streets. Fights break out. Torches flicker. The city does not sleep. It merely dims. Listen carefully and you can hear the whisper of wind through the alleys. The sigh of a tired horse. A lullaby sung softly in the dark. And in the morning, the mist returns. You rise again. Wash your face in cold water. Why wouldn't you last a day in a medieval city? Not because you are weak. There is no refrigeration, no anesthesia, no antibiotics. And yet, the people endure. They find ways to laugh, to love. Tonight, we remember not only their suffering, but their strength. The way they endured without expecting comfort. And as we leave their streets behind, let us do so slowly. Now, dear listener, with the echoes of this city still in your mind, let us gently move forward. For what came next would reshape not only the city, but the world. Segment 2. How the Black Death Changed the Medieval World. Welcome back, dear listener. The flickering torchlight beneath the city still lingers in your mind, casting shadows on the stone walls of memory. But now, we return to those same cobbled alleys, that same crowded, chaotic life, under a new shadow. A deeper shadow, one that can stretch across continents, linger in whispers and weeping, and leave behind a Europe forever altered. Tonight, in this hushed hour, we explore how the Black Death changed the medieval world. A whisper on the wind, the year is 1346. Far to the east, beyond the borders of what most Europeans know, A silent storm is forming along the trade routes that weave through the heart of Asia, through the deserts of Central Asia, the markets of the Silk Road, and the bustling cities on the steppes. Rumors begin to take shape. People speak of fever, of darkness beneath the skin, of towns left empty, livestock wandering alone, of prayers that seem unanswered. It spreads quietly, hidden in the folds of life, carried by fleas that nest in the fur of rats, rats that travel in sacks of grain, in the straw of stables, and aboard the hulls of ships. It is, at first, invisible, then undeniable. By 1347, the Black Death has reached the ports of the Black Sea, especially the trading city of Kap. It arrives not as a roar, but a breath of breath held too long. Some say it came with besieging Mongols catapulting infected corpses over city walls. The rats have the fleas have jumped. The plague is no longer traveling, it is here. But then strange swellings appear, buboes. They are cold, letter tender, painful. Beneath the arms and between the legs, the swellings blacken, they burst. Delirium sets in, and death comes, usually within days. Others claim it drifted in with merchant ships, nestled among spices and silks. The market buzzes with voices. Fishermen haul their morning catch, no locks that hold. The bells of a distant church echo through the salty air. From Kafar it travels westward, crossing the sea, sliding past harbor walls, disembarking not just on land, but into daily life. It lands in Sicily, then Marseille, then Genoa, then Venice. Science, as we know it, does not yet exist. Germ theory lies centuries away. And then ... everywhere. Others speak of celestial alignments, of the wrath of the planets. Most believe it is divine punishment. Foreigners, Jews, beggars, even cats are accused. In Strasbourg, thousands of Jews are burned alive. In other cities, entire communities vanish under suspicion. Kings retreat behind castle walls. Nuns perish, caring for orphans. Dogs scavenge for food. So they pray, they fast, they beat their breasts. And some go even further. Clergy can no longer keep up with funerals. In some towns, there are not enough living to bury the dead. Unseeing, unstoppable life continues for the smallest creatures, indifferent to human suffering. Survivors flee, leaving homes, crops, livestock, memories. No one answers the knock at the door. Imagine again, if you will, a typical day in a busy Mediterranean port city. They whip themselves with knotted ropes. They chant, they cry, they hope that pain will appease the divine. A ship docks. It brings silk from Constantinople, spices from Alexandria, and something else, a stillness, a cough, a shadow. Feudal lords offer wages to keep workers. The hierarchy trembles, the sailor collapses. Then too, the docks are cleared, but it is too late. The dongsma, a reminder that all must face the end, be they king or peasant. At first it seems like any sickness, a fever, fatigue. Why did prayer fail? Why did the righteous perish? Why did God allow this? The healthy flee the city. They bring the plague with them. From the ports it travels inland, along rivers, across roads, into monasteries and marketplaces, into castles and cottages. There are no borders it respects. A seed is planted of doubt, of inquiry, of individual thought, one that will bloom centuries later. The world of peasants and plagues will, in time, give way to a world of scholars and skepticism, a fractured understanding. Cities begin to think more about public health, though the ideas are rudimentary. The people try to make sense of it. Some blame foul air miasmas. They call them, especially those lingering near swamps and graveyards, God. Angry at sin, angry at pride, angry at the world's wickedness. Flagellants emerge, processions of men walking from town to town, barefoot, shirtless, and bleeding. In the absence of answers, fear seeks targets. But on the resilience, the survival, the quiet dignity of those who endured. The plague, meanwhile, does not discriminate. It takes the rich and the poor, the holy and the heretic, the child and the elder. Priests die delivering last rites. The sound of silence for the story of treasure lost, hidden perhaps, never real, but always whispered. Now return again to the medieval city we visited before, but see it through this new lens. The market square is empty, the baker's oven has gone cold, church bells toll endlessly. Families barricade themselves inside. Streets are lined with red crosses. Wooden carts carry the dead, not goods. Children cry for parents who never return. Bodies are buried in mass graves dug hurriedly, closed without ceremony. Cities fall into eerie quiet, and yet the rats scurry. Estimates vary. Some say a third of Europe died. Others suggest more, up to half. In places, entire villages are wiped out. Ripples in the fabric, but the story does not end in silence. Something stirs in the stillness. Laborers, now scarce, become valuable. A plowman who once earned a few coins now demands 10 times that. The fields need tending, the cities need rebuilding. Peasants begin to move, no longer tied to the land. Old structures, social, economic, religious, bend and crack. Some break entirely. The church, once all-powerful, finds its authority questioned. Some lose faith. Others turn inward. Even art changes. In paintings and carvings, death now dances a skeletal figure with a mocking grin. Philosophy turns more introspective. Literature more haunting. Architecture more austere. A transformation has begun. New beginnings in the ashes. In time, the plague weakens. It does not vanish, it will return in waves, but its initial fury softens. People return to their trades. Cities reopen. Songs are sung again. Laughter, tentative, returns. But the world has changed. There are new laws about sanitation, about burial, about public gatherings. The printing press is only a century away, the Reformation not far behind. And yet, something of the old world remains in our language, in our fears, in the shape of our cities. A quiet reflection. Now, as you lie still, consider this. The Black Death was not only an ending, it was also a beginning. A harsh teacher, a cruel pivot, but a pivot nonetheless. The medieval world gasped. It mourned, and then it rebuilt. Not all survived, but those who did carried something forward. A memory, a wisdom, a new way of seeing. Tonight, as we remember that time, let us not dwell only on suffering. Breathe in, slowly. Breathe out. You are safe. You are warm. And though the world has changed many times since then, the stories remain, waiting to be told. In the next segment, we trade pestilence for mystery. We turn to the Knights Templar and the treasure that was never found. Segment 3. The Templar treasure that was never found. Welcome back, dear listener. As the echo of bells and the shadow of plague recede, we now move into a quieter corridor of time, one not marked by disease or toil but by mystery. Settle yourself again. Let the air still. Imagine yourself under a starless sky, walking slowly through a stone corridor lit by flickering torches. Each step echoes, each breath carries the scent of old earth and whispers of secrets long buried. Tonight we delve into one of the most enduring legends of the medieval world, the mystery of the Knights Templar and their fabled lost treasure, the rise of the Templars. To understand the treasure, we must first understand the order. The year is 1119. Jerusalem, freshly captured by the Crusaders, teeters between sacred triumph and vulnerable isolation. They are no longer simply a band of knights. They are an order. They become the Knights Templar. They pledge themselves not to glory in battle, but to protection. Their charge is to safeguard pilgrims, to ensure safe passage through hostile lands. A pilgrim can deposit money in London, and after presenting the correct documentation withdraw it in Acre. They do not own riches as individuals, but as a collective. Their coffers grow fat with tithes, donations, rents, and the spoils of conquest. They create what some consider the earliest forms of banking. They take solemn vows, poverty, chastity, and obedience. They live humbly, housed in the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, thus their name. The poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. The roads from the coast to the Holy City are fraught with danger, bandits, raiders, and remnants of defeated armies. Known as Philip the Fair not for his kindness, but for his appearance, he is a man burdened by debt and driven by ambition. He has borrowed heavily from the Templars. Their very existence poses a threat. Years of trial, interrogation, and political maneuvering follow. They are accused of heresy, idolatry, sexual perversion, and blasphemy. The charges are lurid, shocking. Many confess but under torture. Others refuse and die in silence. They are an autonomous force, wealthy and powerful, loyal only to the Pope. Christian pilgrims journeying to fulfill vows or seek redemption travel in fear. But when the arrests began, many of these records disappeared. Their vaults were opened and found lacking. Others spoke of buried gold, secret crypts, and ships that vanished. It is said that days before the arrests, several Templar ships departed, never to be seen again. Some claim they sailed to Scotland, whose rulers remained sympathetic. Others say they reached Portugal, where the Templars would be reborn as the Order of Christ. Jerusalem is lost. Acre, the final stronghold, falls in 1291. The Templars retreat, their purpose dimmed, their prestige wounded. In response to this need, a small band of knights, 9 by most accounts, form a brotherhood, or ancient scrolls from the time of Solomon. Granted privileges by popes, shielded from taxes and kings, they acquire vast estates. They build fortresses and preceptories, miniature kingdoms from Ireland to Jerusalem. They fight in the Crusades, but also learn to wield power through pen and ledger. At first, they are humble, unnoticed. But in 1129, with the backing of Bernard of Clairvaux, powerful abbot and writer of spiritual texts, their rule is formalized, and what follows is unprecedented growth. It is said that, with flames licking at his feet, he curses both the Pope and the king, summoning them to divine judgment. Within a year, both men are dead. Over the next 2 centuries, the Templars evolve from protectors of pilgrims to administrators of empires. They develop systems of finance. Despite their vow of poverty, the order becomes unimaginably wealthy. The fall begins, but no power in history rises without casting a shadow. By the early 1300s, the Crusader states in the Holy Land have collapsed. In France, King Philip IV watches closely. And so, on Friday, October 13, 1307, a date that legend has immortalized, Philip strikes. With chilling precision, hundreds of Templars across France are arrested in a single day. Jacques de Maille, the Grand Master of the Order, is captured and imprisoned. In 1312, Pope Clement V, under pressure from Philip, officially dissolves the order. Their lands are seized, their symbols erased, their chapter ends, and in 1314 Jacques de Maille is burned at the stake in Paris. But before the flames, before the arrests, before the full what became of their treasure, the vanishing Templar documents, inventories, and accounts had once been meticulously kept. Rumors rose swiftly. Some whispered that treasure caravans had left Paris in the dead of night, bound for hidden. One tale persists, that of the port of La Rochelle. More fantastic theories emerged with time. Some claimed the Templars guarded not just wealth but secrets, that among their relics was the Holy Grail itself, or the Ark of the Covenant. Over centuries, the legend bloomed, fed by silence. Where history ends, imagination begins. It goes in stone and story. You can still walk in the footsteps of the Templars. In London, the Temple Church stands as a reminder, a circular sanctuary echoing the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Its carved effigies rest beneath stained glass. Its walls hold the breath of centuries. In Rosslyn Chapel, Scotland, intricate carvings and symbols inspire endless theories. In Tomar, Portugal, a great convent spirals around a sacred space where knights once knelt in prayer. Are they clues or simply echoes? Modern historians urge caution. They remind us that treasure tales often arise when politics fail, that wealth may have been seized quietly, that mystery sells better than mundane truth. And yet, the story endures, because it touches something universal, a longing for lost knowledge, a hope that something precious lies hidden, a belief that not all secrets are forgotten, the treasure within the mystery, one not solved by gold or relics but by the persistence of story, the enduring echo of footsteps in empty halls, the shiver that passes through us when we ponder the unfounded. Still imagining. And so, as you lie still, dear listener, let us step gently away from the known. Let us linger in the quiet spaces of the past, not for answers, but for peace. In her world of etiquette and embroidery, power and silence, the Templars, whether heroes or hypocrites, left behind a puzzle. Perhaps there was treasure, perhaps it is gone, but the greater treasure may be this: that centuries later, in the hush of night, you and I are still wondering, still listening. In our final chapter, we turn inward to a life lived not in secret or shadow, but behind curtains of silk and expectation. We spend a day with a noble woman in 14th century France. Let us walk softly there, together. Segment 4. A day in the life of a noble woman in 14th century France. Welcome once more, dear listener. Let your mind grow still, your breath steady, as we turn now from the dimly lit corridors of secret orders to the sun-dappled chambers of nobility. This time, we do not follow knights or kings. We walk in quiet as steps into the enclosed world of a noblewoman. Imagine yourself now, waking within stone walls draped in fine tapestries. The morning light filters softly through narrow, arched windows in routines and rituals, in silks and silences. Her world is a delicate balance of grace, decorum, and quiet strength. A fire, low but steady, still crackles in the hearth. You are in a chateau somewhere nestled in the gentle hills of 14th century France. Layers are added carefully. A linen chemise, a kirtle, then a gown of brocade or velvet. Perhaps fur trims the sleeves. A girdle both functional and symbolic is fastened at the waist. Jewels may be added or not. It depends on the day, on who might call. She oversees the household, which can be as complex as a small town. Meals must be planned, supplies accounted for, servants managed, linen washed. She is the linchpin of estate life, the quiet governor of domestic order. She decides which spices to use for the coming week, which bolts of cloth are needed from the market, which tapestry is to be repaired, guests prepared for. Prayer is not just a duty, it is a rhythm. A steward reporting on the grain stores or the tenant farmers. Conversations are courteous, deliberate, and often coded in politeness. Every word carries weight, a tether to God in a world shaped by uncertainty. Her maidservant, one of many in the household, enters quietly, carrying a copper basin of warmed water and fresh linens. There is no rush, no demands. The day unfolds slowly. The world outside may be turbulent, but within these walls, tradition and expectation reign. Tutors come and go. She watches, guides, shapes their futures with care. Her influence molds character, even as her own life remains bound by tradition. Today, we spend a day in her life, the morning hour. The noblewoman does not rise with the sun, but shortly after. Dressing is not a task but a ceremony. Hair is brushed, braided, and coiled. A fine veil might be placed atop her head, held by a fillet or crespy net. Her appearance is not for vanity, it is a sign of her station, her family's honor, her virtue. Even the smallest adornment speaks volumes. Breakfast is taken in private, bread with honey, warm wine or ale, fresh fruit if the season allows. The halls remain quiet at this hour. Servants whisper. The world outside the estate stirs, but inside it is calm. Or a book if she can read. Literacy among noble women is not rare, but not universal. If she is educated, she may have learned Latin, or French poetry, or religious scripture. Some compose prayers or letters, others illuminate texts with gold leaf. She might sit by the window then, embroidery hoop in hand. Duties and domains, though confined by social expectations, the noble woman's life is not idle. She does not plow fields or hammer iron, but her role is critical. She also manages the storerooms, inspects the larders, and ensures that the cellar is stocked with wine and vinegar. On some days, she visits the chapel either within the manor or a short walk away. She may receive visitors, a local priest. Children, if she has them, are never far. Young sons raised to become squires or scholars. Daughters taught music, manners, and modesty. The afternoon quiet. By midday, the chateau feels warmer. The kitchens are alive with smells of meat, herbs, and freshly baked bread. A formal meal is served, perhaps roasted fowl, spiced stews, thick sauces. Silver plates clink softly. Conversation is light. Lavender, sage, roses in bloom. A fountain murmurs. The air carries the hum of bees. There, she might weave, or write a letter, or simply gaze out over the lands she rarely walks, but silently stewards. There, in solitude or gentle company, she finds a rare sense of freedom. After the meal, she may walk in the garden, a small, enclosed space, or she may retire to a solar or sunlit room above the great hall. These verses echo a life she is meant to idealize: romance from afar, loyalty through distance, nobility in silence. Sometimes, she receives a troubadour or listens to songs of courtly love. She may engage in tapestry work, a painstaking process that could take months or years. The images she weaves are not just for beauty, they record her lineage, her piety, her place in the world. She prays for her husband, if he is away at court or in battle. She prays for her children, for health, for peace, for the souls in purgatory. Outside these walls, life is different, loud, rough. But here, time moves slowly, elegantly. Evening rituals, she guards the customs of her class, holds the memory of her house, offers shelter, stability, tradition. As the sun lowers, candles are lit, shadows stretch across the tapestries. Music may fill the hollow lute, perhaps, or harp. A bard tells tales, or recites the courtly romances of Detroit, in choices made behind closed doors. In the preservation of peace, of family, of structure, she offers hospitality but also judgment. She yields in public, but rules in private. The stories are filled with knights and ladies, quests and honor. They mirror the ideals she is meant to embody. Dinner is lighter, a pottage cheese, a sweet wine, fewer guests, quieter tones. Before bed, she may pray again, kneeling on a padded stool beside her bed, and sometimes that whisper is enough to bring you peace. Her bed is large, canopied, soft, with feather-stuffed mattress and fur cover. Her maid helps her undress, folding garments carefully. The fire is stoked once more, a rhythm not of power or battle but of grace, of ritual, of calm. She lies down. The night is quiet, and though her world may seem small, it is one of weight and consequence. Behind the curtain, the noble woman is rarely seen in history books. Her letters, if any survive, are few. Her influence, subtle, but she is there in the fabric of law, in the lineage of estates, in the upbringing of generations. Her silences speak, her footsteps, muffled by velvet halls, still echo. Her life is not one of loud conquest or sweeping declarations. She bears children but also legacies. She may never touch a sword or ride to war, but she shapes the men who do. And now, as we conclude this quiet journey through time, may you carry with you the gentle rhythm of her day. Let your breath soften, let your thoughts slow. The past is not always loud, sometimes it is a whisper. Sleep well, dear listener, until our next passage through time. Conclusion. The soft echo of the past, and now, dear listener, we come to the close of our long and gentle passage through time. From the crowded alleys of a medieval city to the flickering torchlight of a Templar stronghold, from the winds that carried the Black Death across kingdoms to the still, silken chambers of a noble woman's home, we have wandered together through stories not often told aloud at such a quiet hour. You have glimpsed the rhythm of lives lived centuries before yours. Some of those lives were loud and public, marked by kings, battles, and legend. Life was lived in small moments, in footsteps over cobblestone, in the flicker of candlelight on stone walls, in hushed prayers whispered before sleep. Others were quiet, stitched into the seams of history by the hands of those who ruled households, not armies. A sense that even in the distant past, humanity beat with the same heart, and how a woman, cloaked in brocade, could move quietly through her world, shaping it without needing to raise her voice. But all of them mattered. What history teaches us, especially when we walk through it slowly, is that even in the grandest upheavals, we have not come seeking answers, nor dramatic revelations. Instead, we have sought immersion stillness. You now know how fragile this city once was, how swiftly a life could change with the plague, how even kings fell, how treasure could vanish without trace. And as you lie here now, let these stories settle around you like a soft blanket. Let the sounds of history dim, let the candle burn low. The past, like sleep, does not demand, it invites. So drifts now carried by echoes will return again, another night, to another forgotten chapter. Until then, may your dreams be gentle, and your night be peaceful. Good night, dear listener. Introduction. A long walk through the medieval world. Life, plague, and justice. Welcome. Take a slow breath in and gently exhale. Let your body rest against the weight of the present moment. No tasks, no lights, no urgency, only stillness and a quiet curiosity. This evening, or perhaps early morning depending on where you are, we invite you on a journey back in time, far back, to a world both familiar and foreign. The hiss of a cooking fire, the steady rhythm of work, of prayer, of surviving another sunrise. A world built not with electricity or concrete, but of stone and smoke, timber and time. This is the medieval world. Forget the drama of kings and wars for now. Let the rhythm of ancient life lull your mind. Some parts may capture your attention, others may drift past unnoticed. That is as it should be. First, daily life. Simple, slow, and often difficult. Then, a shadow falls. The Black Death, and how it reshaped everything. We will look for meaning in the remains of culture, belief, and buried history. And finally, we arrive at the stern, unsettling logic of medieval justice. Set aside the clashes of armies and the coronations of rulers. Imagine the rhythm of bells marking hours not by clocks but by the sun. Tonight, we will walk among the people who history often whispers about, but rarely spotlights. The shopkeeper, the washerwoman, the apprentice, the priest, the criminal, the child. It is a gentle unraveling of stories too old to be urgent and too human to be forgotten. Only time, worn faces, heavy doors, the soft creak of a wooden cart. We begin not with battle horns or royal edicts, but with the slow unfolding of a day in a medieval city. The worn boots on muddy streets. You don't need to remember everything. Let the facts flow past like water in a stream. As you listen, imagine the weight of a wool cloak on your shoulders, the scent of baked rye bread in the air, the uneven stones beneath your feet. We will explore 4 aspects of this world tonight. This is not a thrill, it is not a horror. So settle in, let your shoulders drop. Let your mind wander with us into a world with no electricity, no internet, no alarms, no speed. Let us begin. Segment 1. Daily Life Immersion. Why you wouldn't last a day in a medieval city. The first thing you notice when you wake in a medieval city is the cold. Not a biting cold, necessarily, but the kind that lingers in the bones, the kind that never quite leaves, even under layers of wool and linen. There is no privacy. One room holds it all but hearth, table, tools, and family. The wooden beams above you groan softly as the wind presses against the thatch roof. There is no insulation, no central heating, only the dying coals in the hearth and the warmth of bodies packed close together. You rise from your straw-filled mattress, brushing away bits of hay that cling to your tunic. The air smells of ash, dampness, old wood, and bodies. You might not notice it if you've never known anything else. But if you are from another time, a future time, it would seem heavy, tangible. In homes, in markets, in fields, there brew ale, bake bread, spin wool, tend to children and animals. Their labor is invisible, expected, essential. Your day begins not with coffee, but with labor. When open, they let in the day. You carry it in wooden buckets, balancing carefully so as not to spill. There are feast days, fast days, saints' days. Time does not tick by in seconds, but flows with seasons and ceremonies. Barrels of pickled vegetables sit next to woven baskets of herbs. You hear bits of half-remembered songs from passing musicians. A juggler performs with clinking wooden pins. Pilgrimages offer not just spiritual merit, but a rare change of scenery. In taverns lit by tallow candles, in alehouses warmed by laughter and drink, their tongues loosen, songs rise. On the road, you might meet storytellers, scholars, peddlers of charms. Each brings whispers of other places, strange ideas, and tales from afar. Children chase one another through the legs of slow-moving adults. Even if you do not read, you know the calendar by heart. You might listen as an old man recounts what the city looked like when he was young. The fire crackles, the ale warms your chest, and for a moment, despite the hardships, there is peace. in another sunrise. You bathe rarely, maybe once a week, maybe less. The straw beneath you shifts. A single candle flickers near the hearth. Outside, the wind murmurs across rooftops. The hush of night in a place that never knew silence, but always knew stillness. The blessing before meals, the marking of a name day, the quiet tending of a dying fire. These were not merely tasks. They were threads in a fragile tapestry, stitched to hold chaos at bay. Cradled by walls that groaned with age, and sheltered by nothing but habit, hope, and each other. There are bathhouses in some cities, though their reputations vary. You might catch glimpses of embroidered cloth, or painted saints on church walls, or carved patterns in doors, all evidence of a human need to beautify even the roughest spaces. A child's laughter at a street performance, a pair of worn hands clasped in evening prayer, the slow gathering of neighbors to share news, bread, and time. There was resilience in routine, a rhythm to daily existence that gave meaning, even if not comfort. A mother braiding her daughter's hair with care, a craftsman perfecting a chair leg, a monk carefully copying a text in candlelight. Each action small, each moment quiet, but all of them holding up the weight of a world. Cleanliness is not about freshness, but ritual and health. When shut, they keep out wind and prying eyes. The floors are dirt or rough wood. If you're wealthy, perhaps stone. You trust herbs, prayers, leeches. You hope. There is no germ theory, no antibiotics, only tradition, guesswork, and divine will. If you're lucky, there might be a scrap of stale bread or porridge left from yesterday. A child cries, a merchant calls, a dog barks, yet none of it feels rushed. There is no urgency. As a tanner, a weaver, a blacksmith, your tools are precious, passed down or painfully earned. Your skills define your place in the world. Apprenticeship begins young, perhaps at 7 or 8 years old, and lasts 4 years. Work is physical, repetitive. It shapes your body, your back aches, your hands crack. Toys are rare. Play happens with sticks, stones, imagination. Laughter exists, even here. Only the slow momentum of necessity. The breath of chimneys puffing smoke into the gray morning. The breath of livestock stirring in small pens. Gutters run down the center of the road, not for stormwater, but for refuse. Festivals, feasts, holy days. Color emerges during these days. Banners, dyed, cloth, flowers. People sing, dance, drink. Even the poorest find ways to mark joy when it comes. Waste, both human and animal, is tossed from windows. You learn to walk close to the walls. The breath of early risers sweeping stoops or hauling water. If you're even luckier, a rind of cheese or a piece of cured fish. Meals are frugal, functional. Eating is not about pleasure, but survival. As you step outside, the city greets you not with bustle, but with breath. Streets are narrow. Buildings lean into one another, their second stories overhanging the path below. The city is not quiet. Sounds layer upon each other like cinnamon a bell tolls from a nearby chapel. Hooves clatter over cobblestone. You might work in a guild, if you are fortunate. Women work constantly, though the world seldom thanks them for it. Most homes have no glass windows, just wooden shutters. Water must be fetched, often from a communal well. The church shapes your time. Bells ring for matins, lauds. Illness is common. Medicine is limited. A cold can become a fever. A cut can fester. Children are not protected from labor. They are expected to contribute. By 10, a child may already be considered almost grown. Despite the hardship, there is community. Neighbors know one another. Gossip is currency. Stories are shared at night, near the fire. The market square becomes the heart of the city. It is not a grand place, but it pulses with life. Merchants call out prices. Bakers arrange loaves. There are moments of levity. Some people travel to larger towns to hear sermons, to visit a relic, or to trade. Craftsmen in their workshops might pass the day in silence, save for the sound of mallets and chisels. But in the evening, they gather. You might hear about someone falling ill, or a merchant caught in a storm. You close your eyes. Sleep comes slowly, softly, as it did for them, as it does for you. But before you drift fully into rest, let's pause a moment longer in that quiet space between waking and sleep. Because even within hardship, there were traces of hope. In the soft corners of this medieval life, families clung to rituals handed down for generations. You might hear music, not orchestras, but the pluck of a lute, the hum of a lullaby, the beat of feet on wooden floors during a festival dance. And in the midst of the squalor, there was dignity. The city is not only hardship, it is also faith in the heavens, in each other. So you lay down again on the rough pallet, and perhaps now you understand why the rhythm mattered, why they rose each morning, again and again. Sleep now, as they once did. Segment 2. The Black Death. How the Black Death changed the medieval world. The rhythm of life we've come to know, the chill of early mornings, the soft murmur of voices in market squares. The laughter drifting from taverns was interrupted in a way so profound, so quiet and insidious, it changed the world forever. It was not a war, nor a revolution, but something invisible, something that traveled on the wind and in the shadows. A sailor in a busy Mediterranean port would feel a sudden chill, a fever burning beneath his skin. Another crew member might develop swollen glands known then as buboes bulging painfully beneath clothing. The sickness spread swiftly and silently through the cramped decks. Soon, entire ships were drifting aimlessly, manned only by the dead or those too sick to care. The usual clamor of carts rolling on cobblestones, of voices calling across markets, of children playing in alleys, now replaced by an eerie stillness in England alone. Historians estimate that up to 1/3 of the population perished. In Italy and France, the numbers were even more staggering. Towns that had once thrived fell silent. Fields were left untended. Markets closed. The steady rhythm of life was shattered, broken only by the tolling of a distant bell or the scurry of rats among the debris. Fear settled over the populace like a heavy fog. People abandoned neighbors who showed the first signs of illness. Some locked themselves behind thick wooden doors, while others fled in desperation, unaware that they might carry the invisible plague with them. Annual days of remembrance were established, with candles lit in windows and quiet gatherings in churches. Wells were carefully built and maintained. Streets were swept and cleaned more regularly. Hospitals, often run by religious orders, were established to care for the ill. Universities, previously cloistered and conservative, began to question the nature of disease and human health. Early scholars recorded symptoms, experimented with treatments, and pondered causes beyond divine punishment. These early inquiries laid the groundwork for the scientific advancements of the Renaissance. Quarantines, once unheard of, became common practice, isolating the sick to prevent further spread. A shepherd passes by, unaware of the history beneath his feet. The earth remembers, but it also forgives. These were not grand celebrations, but solemn acknowledgments of survival and sorrow. To appreciate the endurance that carries us through dark times, churches enlarged their windows to flood interiors with sunlight, symbolizing hope and cleansing. In the spaces between breaths, in the silence after church bells toll, in the gentle turning of a page in a month, weddings and festivals resumed, bringing music and laughter back to once silent streets. The human spirit, stubborn and resilient, endured. Let the echoes of the past soothe you, not with fear, but with understanding. Cemeteries were moved outside crowded city centers, creating tranquil churchyards for quiet reflection. Guilds and fraternal orders formed to support widows, orphans, and the sick, early examples of organized charity that helped to rebuild the social fabric, something we now call the Black Death. It began in the year 1347, along the bustling trade routes that connected distant lands. Caravans laden with silk and spices, merchant ships brimming with goods. Something darker journeyed silently. Fleas, those tiny creatures no bigger than a pinhead, hitchhiked on the backs of black rats aboard these ships. Landowners found themselves scrambling to attract the hands required to maintain their estates. This shift gave peasants and laborers a new bargaining power. His quill scratches softly on parchment as he copies not prayers but observations of the plague-esque symptoms. Outside, the streets are still and empty. His work, humble but vital, preserves knowledge for generations yet unborn, known as the Danse Macabre or Dance of Death. These artworks reminded all who saw them that death was the great equalizer, sparing no one, regardless of wealth or status. For the first time in centuries, many were able to demand wages or better working conditions. The rigid, centuries-old social hierarchy began to tremble. Others clung more tightly to their beliefs, seeking solace in prayer and ritual. Flagellant movements, where people whipped themselves in public acts of penance, spread across the continent. The church, struggling to explain the plague and its devastation, was both a beacon of hope and a source of fear. And those fleas carried a deadly passenger, a bacterium named yeast. At first, people would dismiss the stories, hoping they were exaggerated. Mothers continued to tend their children. Farmers worked their fields. Priests held mass as always. Bodies piled faster than gravediggers could bury them. Church bells tolled endlessly, mourning the dead while calling others to prayer and last rites. Clergy, who moved among the sick to offer comfort, soon felt themselves. Burial grounds overflowed, forcing communities to dig massive pits at the edges of towns and cities. Entire families vanished, leaving empty homes and silent streets. But then the sickness crept closer. One day, a traveler coughing softly, his skin pale and marked with dark blotches. Within days, the sickness spread to his neighbors. Fever, a pounding headache, painful swelling, a dry, rasping breath, and then silence. The first signs were subtle and easily mistaken for ordinary illness. Now, imagine a small village hearing distant whispers, rumors, almost of a strange and terrible illness in the south. This was the plague, not merely a disease, but a cataclysm that dismantled the very fabric of medieval society. In the cities, the devastation was almost incomprehensible. Imagine walking those streets after shutters had been drawn tight. Across Europe, The disease did not discriminate. Peasants, merchants, nobles, and clergy all succumbed. But with this devastation came a ripple of profound change. The sudden loss of life created a scarcity of labor. The fields needed tending, the mills needed workers. This period of upheaval even influenced the arts. Paintings and murals began to depict skeletons not as terrifying monsters, but as companions, dancing alongside the living. Religion, too, was profoundly affected. Some lost faith in the face of such indiscriminate death. This tragedy also left lasting marks on culture and society. In the years that followed, communities developed rituals to remember those lost. Cities and towns themselves began to change. Public health, once a foreign concept, slowly took root. Architecturally, light and air gained new importance. Even the intellectual landscape shifted. Picture a solitary scholar bent over candlelight in a quiet scriptorium. And life, despite all the loss, persisted. Children were born into quieter, emptier worlds. Families were smaller. Markets reopened. Imagine a meadow in spring, its grass soft and green, wildflowers blooming where once a burial pit lay. And so do we. We remember not to hold on to sorrow, but to understand the deep currents that shaped our world. As your eyelids grow heavier and your thoughts begin to drift, remember that history lives not only in grand events but in quiet moments. Let sleep find you as gently as fog drifts into a medieval valley, comforting and slow. The plague passed, the people endured, and so shall we. Segment 3. The silent echoes of the medieval world now. Let the path of our thoughts drift further away from bustling city streets and plague-struck alleys. Imagine a place much quieter, a ruined abbey covered in ivy, a moss-covered stone path leading to nowhere, a buried village discovered beneath a farmer's plow. Yet here and there, in the soil and stone, in parchments and pottery shards, the medieval world whispers. Each find, seemingly insignificant, tells a story. A cracked bowl suggests a dropped meal. A bentonel implies repairs in haste. The monks who once illuminated those texts by candlelight are gone, but their work persists. Some scrolls still contain the fingerprints of their scribes, a smudged ink where a monk paused too long, or a faint bloodstain from a nicked quill-wielding finger. A child's toy, buried beside a skeleton no older than 5, speaks of life that once played, once laughed hand, was then lost to time. The stones are cold and worn by centuries of wind. Some have been left untouched since the 12th century. Standing within them, the silence is almost physical. What conversations happened here? Within it, bones of animals, scattered coins, fragments of a loom. A place once filled with voices, laughter, anger, dreams. Now, it sleeps beneath the earth, waiting to be remembered. The loom fragment easily overlooked told a deeper story. A woman who worked each day to clothe their family, spinning thread as her ancestors had for centuries. Researchers handle bones with reverence, reading them like books. From worn joints and healed fractures, we learn how people lived and how they bore pain. That fragment said more than any chronicle. Others are memorials of journeys taken, of ships sailed and not returned. Their messages are stoic, sparse, but poetic. He carved these runes in memory of his brother. He was a good man. What decisions, loves, betrayals, quiet deaths, wooden beams preserved in peat, leather shoes, perfectly intact, even bits of fabric that still hold dye, faint reds and oak. These items survive not because they were treasured, but because they were ordinary. These small items hint at the spiritual lives of everyday people who carried their hopes and fears in pouches tied to belts. Some graffiti marks tally how many times someone visited. Others express thanks, Mary, save me. These voices were never meant for history, yet they endure. Ivy grows up through the cloisters, yet beneath its floor in forgotten tombs and storage rooms lie clues, wax seals from letters long under. Let the slow, steady work of archaeologists remind you, nothing is truly lost, only waiting to be uncovered, or simply rest in the quiet truth that the world is larger than we know, that buried beneath our feet is 1,000 years of stories, soft ones, silent ones, and some that whisper only when the world is still. Let the silent echoes of the medieval world hum quietly around you, all buried within a short time, likely a plague or famine. Tiny shoes, beads, and scraps of cloth lay beside them, a quiet mourning that survived hundreds of years. Herbs in clay jars once used in medicinal brews and rosary beads worn smooth by fingers that once moved in silent prayer. Every stone foundation, every forgotten path, every object lost and later found. These are the chapters of a vast book we are still reading. A child playing by a stream finds a rusted brooch, shaped like a lion. In northern Italy, a grave was found where a woman was buried, face down, a sign of punishment or fear. No records survive, but the way her body was laid speaks volumes. In these moments, the past reaches up gently into the present, offering a fragment of a forgotten life. Welcome to the realm of what has been forgotten and slowly remembered. Much of the medieval world has faded not through deliberate destruction, but through the slow erosion of time. Buildings crumbled, languages changed, beliefs shifted. A monk, perhaps bored, once drew a tiny image of a snail fighting a knight. Another left jokes or complaints. "This ink is terrible today." One scribe wrote, "Pray that the day ends quickly." These voices, casual and unguarded, bring humanity to the medieval past. Let us begin in the ancient city of Winchester. Beneath the foundations of modern houses, archaeologists unearthed the remains of timber-framed homes, fire pits, and broken cooking pots. Across Europe, the remains of monastic libraries lie in fragmented parchment. Many are faded now, their colors lost to smoke and time. Each mason had his own sign, a quiet signature on his life's work. He didn't expect fame, but he wanted to be remembered. Yet sometimes, in the right light, with careful restoration, a saint's calm eyes or a dragon's coiled tail returns. Through these images, we see what medieval people feared and what they hoped for. Picture a long-abandoned monastery in northern France. Then, there are the painted walls of frescoes that once told stories to those who could not read, and we come to the ruins. Throughout England and Ireland, one finds the remains of stone towers ring. Archaeologists discovered one such home in rural Germany, buried beneath farmland. Imagine yourself walking through a field where beneath your feet lies an entire forgotten village. Not all discoveries are peaceful. Sometimes, there are masked graves, reminders of war, plague, famine, but even these hold dignity. Sometimes, discoveries arrive by accident. A farmer unearths a sword while planting beet. And then there are the texts, old parchment, crumbling and browned. Sometimes reveals marginalia notes scribbled in the sides of books. The cathedrals still standing tell stories. To look closely at a column and you might see a mason's mark, a small, personal symbol carved discreetly. In Scandinavia, runestones dot the countryside, simple messages carved in stone over 1,000 years ago. Some are grave markers, and under city streets, especially in places like York or Paris, lie entire preserved neighborhoods. We also uncover belief, tiny relics such as pilgrim tokens, carried across long distances, sometimes even to their owners' graves, amulets to ward off sickness, medals to protect travelers. Even medieval graffiti reveals something rich. In castles and churches, scratched into stone by idle hands, are prayers, names, even doodles of ships or saints. Imagine someone standing in the cool hush of a chapel, fingertip pressed to stone, quietly tracing their name, hoping perhaps that someone would one day remember them. We also learn from medieval cemeteries, from the position of graves, the goods buried with the dead, and even the wear on teeth and bones. In one French village, an entire row of graves contained children. Museums now house many of these finds, but the true museum is the earth itself. Let your thoughts drift into those forgotten homes, into the pages left half-written, the prayers never finished, the meals never completed. Sleep now, if you feel it coming. We have walked among shadows and broken walls, among voices that no longer speak aloud, but leave their echoes in stone and dust. And soon, we walk on to the final chapter. But for now, breathe slowly, let the dust settle, let the candles gutter low. Segment 4. The brutal truth about medieval justice. The cobbled streets are quiet now. The lanterns glow low in irons, and as we continue our slow walk through the medieval world, we arrive at a space both feared and respected, the seat of justice. And though today we see it as harsh, brutal, even to the medieval mind, it was the rhythm of right and wrong. Justice in the Middle Ages was not swift, nor was it blind. It was deeply rooted in custom, superstition, religion, and status. Let us begin not with the executioner's axe, but with a simple sound of accusation. A man is accused of stealing a loaf of bread, a woman of practicing witchcraft, another of failing to attend church. In many villages, the first step wasn't trial, it was rumor. Accusation was powerful, sometimes whispered, sometimes shouted in the square. Guilt and innocence often rested, not on proof, but on perception. Imagine standing before a group of your neighbors in the open air, your hands trembling. There is no judge in robes. That was the belief, and many accepted it, even welcomed it, because it gave meaning to an uncertain world. No jury as we know it. Perhaps a priest, perhaps a lord. Repeat: theft, loss of a hand, murder, hanging, treason, beheading, heresy, burning at the stake. Often, just someone with more land and more authority than you. Justice was both local and divine. For those without power, the system could be unforgiving. During that time, they could confess, negotiate exile, or face trial with some protection. Children stood on their father's shoulders. Peddlers sold food. The condemned were paraded, not just to die, but to warn, to instruct. Justice was public so that fear would keep others in line. Monks would feed them. The community would wait. In this pause, sometimes justice softened it. There were courts for merchants, for the church, for royal lands. Slowly, patterns formed. Rights were written down. By the late Middle Ages, even serfs had limited legal protections. Not equality, but a step. Not every system was cruel. Some were surprisingly fair for the time, especially in urban centers where written law began to replace oral custom. One method used was trial by ordeal. A man might be made to plunge his hand into boiling water. You see his eyes not afraid, just tired. A crier reads the charge. The sentence: a day in the stocks. Not death, not torture, just public shame. A knight accused of murder might be tried by his peers. Fines replaced physical punishments. Land and loyalty often bore leniency. The tone was different, less formal, more communal. Here justice was woven into the rhythm of daily life. Fines paid in chickens. Apologies spoken under oak trees. A commoner might lose a hand for theft. A noble might pay silver and walk free. A political tool, silent and swift. While in Italy, some city-states allowed citizens to appeal their punishments through written pleas. Early signs of bureaucracy, of process. If, after 3 days, the wound healed cleanly, he was deemed innocent. Another might be bound and thrown into a river. If he floated, it was believed God had rejected him. Prisoners often had to pay for food, blankets, even chains. Past the faded proclamations nailed to wooden doors. Past the courts, the pillories, the cold stone cells. They're empty now. Only echoes remain. Imprisonment was less a punishment than a waiting room until trial, or until debt was paid. A heretic might be reconciled with the church or burned if he refused. Doctrine and law intertwined. If he sank, he was innocent, though he might not survive to benefit from the verdict. Others faced branding, marked forever as a thief or a liar. The world is gentler here. The bells no longer toll. The sentence is ended. These were punishments meant to last on the body and in the memory. And though the past was often harsh, it teaches us something: that humanity has always struggled to balance fairness with fear, mercy with control. These were not meant to be cruel, but to allow God to speak. The divine would reveal the truth. In others, rampant, often women, especially those old, unmarried, or skilled in herbs, were targets. The Malleus Maleficarum, a book written in the late 15th century, spread fear and legitimized persecution. The line between healing and heresy was thin. A failed harvest, a sick child, a cow that wouldn't give milk all, could be blamed on a woman who lived alone at the edge of town. Let us step now into the shadowed chamber of a medieval court here. The accused might be shackled, the tools of confession laid out: the rack, the thumbscrew, the heretic's fork. Instruments not used in every case, but feared in all. Torture was legal in many places, used to extract confessions, though confessions under duress were not always seen as valid. The paradox was not lost, even then. Yet medieval justice was not without order. There were records, witnesses, punishments scaled by crime. Theft might mean a fine, and yet the outcomes were not always predictable. Consider sanctuary. If the accused could reach a church before being caught, they might claim safety for up to 40 days. For nobles, justice looked different. Public executions were not only about punishment, they were lessons, spectacles, gatherings. But not all punishments ended in death. Some were meant to humiliate. The pillory, where one's head and hands were locked in wood, rotten vegetables thrown, gears echoing. Which trials deserve quiet attention. In some regions, they were rare, but justice also had its nuances. In England, the development of common law introduced judges who traveled recording precedent. Let us pause for a moment and imagine. You are standing at the edge of a town square. The crowd murmurs. A man is led out, hands bound. He stole bread to feed his family. And perhaps someone brings him water. Perhaps a child offers him bread. Even in the darkest structures, mercy sometimes found its way in. In the countryside, manor courts settled disputes over hedges and grazing rights. Let us walk now into a dim prison cell. These were not modern jails. No beds, no toilets, just cold stone, straw, and darkness. In France, the letters de cachet allowed nobility to imprison without trial. And in all of this, the church played its part. Ecclesiastical courts tried priests, monks, and often the educated elite. Their punishments leaned toward penance, pilgrimage, fasting, confession. Now let us return to silence. The tools have been put away. The square is empty. The torch is burned low. You may let your thoughts drift now through those narrow alleys. Breathe in, breathe out. The medieval world was not simple. It was layered, contradictory, harsh and beautiful, fearful and faith-filled. And you have walked through its shadows tonight, not as a judge, nor as the judged, but as a witness. Sleep now, in peace. Let the justice of the past fall away. Let the quiet return. Conclusion. Rest. Now the past is past as we close this long and winding journey through the medieval world. You may find yourself resting in its shadows, quietly observing, never quite apart, but deeply immersed. You heard the murmur of courts and the tolling of bells. You saw how justice was given and taken. And now, with the lessons of time gently folded into memory, it is time to let go. Tonight, you've wandered through stone-paved streets, watched flickering candlelight dance on worn wooden beams, and listened to the soft rhythm of life long past. You stood among merchants and monks. The Middle Ages were neither dark nor golden. They were human, rich with contradiction, shaped by faith and fear, order and chaos. They teach us how far we've come and how much of ourselves still lingers in those distant echoes. Feel the weight of time lifting. The noise is fading now. The cobblestones vanish beneath a blanket of sleep. The torches dim. The ink dries on forgotten parchments. Justice is spoken. Lives have passed. And now, only stillness remains. Breathe deeply. Where once stood gallows and manor courts, there is now silence. The journey is over. The stories are told. The past is at rest. The hands that tilled the land, raised the towers, ruled and rebelled they to sleep. And so may you. Let your thoughts drift gently from the past to the peace of the present. And soon, so will you be. Good night. Sleep well under the quiet stars of history. You have journeyed through the dim alleys of medieval cities, felt the stillness of plague-stricken lands, and stood in the quiet courts of justice. Each tale, a window into a life, once lived each moment, a soft echo from the past. And now, as the flickering candle of history fades to shadow, let the weight of centuries fall away. You are safe. You are still, and as the world outside slumbers, so may you. Rest now, where time stands still.